Most buyers walk into a deal thinking one thing, get the lowest price. And most sellers walk into thinking the opposite, get the highest price. Sounds like a fight, right? Two people on opposite sides of the table trying to win. I can tell you this, I've closed over 600 transactions, and that's not the way the best deals work, not even close. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why the smartest buyers and the smartest sellers are actually on the same side. And knowing that will help you make better offers and close better deals. Here's what most people believe. They believe that negotiation is the game. Whoever pushes hardest wins. Get the price down and the buyer wins. Get the price up and the seller wins. I get it. It sounds logical, but this is where people quietly get themselves into trouble because they're focused on the wrong thing. My name's Trent Lee. I'm the #1 business broker in the country, and I've closed over 600 transactions. I make these videos because I watch buyers and sellers make the same mistake over and over again, and most of the mistakes cost them real money after the deal is done. Not during negotiation, but after. So I see what works, I see what fails, and I see what quietly hurts people once the ink is dry. So I put this stuff together, these videos, so that you don't have to learn the hard way. Let me slow down and let's dive into the details for a minute here. What people think is happening in a deal is a fight over the price. But what is actually happening is both sides are trying to answer the same exact question. That question is, how much risk is sitting inside this business? That's it. That's the whole game. I want to give you a simple framework that I use on every single deal that you should look at or that you will look at. I call it earnings, growth, and risk. Earnings decides what size the deal is. Growth decides how excited the buyer gets, and risk decides how much you're willing to pay for it. Those three things, that's your filter. And here's the part people miss. Price is not the starting point. Price is the result. It's the output. You don't start with price and work backwards. You start with earnings, growth, and risk. And then the price tells you where the deal lands. So let me show you how this plays out with some real numbers. Let's take two businesses, both of which make $500,000 a year. Same exact earnings. Business one is growing 20% every year. Clean bucks, no single customer that makes up more than 15% of the revenue. And the owner could leave for a couple of weeks without things falling apart. Still needs him, but he can operate this without having to be there every single day. Now, the second business, it's flat. Revenue hasn't moved in the last couple of years. Books are a little messy. One customer makes up 40% of the revenue. There's higher risk concentration there. If the owner walks away in a week or two, things start to crumble. Things start to fall apart. Same earnings, but wildly different valuations. A buyer will happily pay a premium for business one, and they should. That business has lower risk, stronger growth, and it does not depend on one person. But business two, that buyer is going to discount business hard, even if they make an offer at all. And here's where it clicks. The seller of business one is not getting a higher price because they negotiated better. They're getting a higher price because they built something better. They built a better business. The risk is lower. The growth is real. The proof is in the numbers, in their clean financials. Here's where deals begin to break, and that's documentation. If the numbers on the tax return do not match internal financials, or at least fairly close, they don't always match perfectly, but they need to be generally close, buyers and lenders start to get nervous and ask questions. And that's not a negotiation problem. That's a trust problem. And trust problems kill deals faster than price disagreements ever will. So if the income is in cash but not recorded on the tax returns, then I suggest as a buyer, you don't pay for it. I don't care if it's real or they somehow showed you cash under the mattress. I don't care if you can prove it on the bank statements. If it's not on the tax returns, most buyers and every single lender that I'm aware of are going to give it zero value. I've seen this happen so many times I can't even count. Seller says they made an extra $150,000, for example, in cash. Maybe it's true. Probably is true. We don't have any way to prove it, but that's the problem. Because there's no proof on paper, A buyer and a lender should give it zero value. And that's not emotion. That's just simple math and logic. So here's the rule I want you to remember. If it's not documented, it's not real. At least not in the transaction sense. You can argue it all day long and try and have the seller prove, but if it's not on the tax returns, it's not real. Now, let me talk to you about something that does not get enough attention, and that's transferability. If the business only works because of the owner, it's not really a business. It's more of a job with a fancy name or a fancy title. And buyers know this. If the owner leaves and everything falls apart, buyers either walk away completely or they discount the price so far that the seller feels insulted. Buyers are not just buying earnings, they're buying what stays after the seller leaves. And that's the real product. That's the stuff that keeps running when they get the keys handed over. Now, here's something that people overthink. Why is the seller selling? Everyone wants to know this like it's some kind of hidden code. Like if they figured out the real reason, they would unlock some secret on the deal. Most of the time, the answer is fairly boring. Growth either slows down or they just got burned out. The business grew fast early in the years and the owner rode the wave and then it flattened out. They took it as far as they could. Maybe they hit their capacity, or maybe they just hit their comfort level, and that's where they're comfortable with. And it really needs at this point some fresh energy, some fresh capital, a different skill set that the owner may not have. That's not necessarily a red flag. In a lot of cases, that's normal. And this is how most small businesses work. So here's the part that people miss again. Slower growth does not kill a deal, but unclear numbers and high risk do. So a business growing 5% a year with clean books and low risk is worth more than a business growing 15% with messy financials and one big customer holding everything together, or an operator that's holding everything together. Now, let me get into something that matters a lot and honestly is not talked about enough, and that's the human risk. If you're buying a business, you need to ask yourself some hard questions. Are you going to be the one holding this thing together? Are you walking into something that needs you 60 hours a week just to keep it flat? I'm not even talking about growing. Are you signing a personal guarantee on an SBA loan for a business that only works if you are the perfect operator every single day? Those are questions buyers need to think about. And you really need to do some soul searching to make sure that the business you're potentially buying is a good fit. And those questions matter because when you sign that loan, your house might be on the line, your savings might be on the line, your family financial future is sitting on the other side of that signature. So the question is not just whether the business makes money, the question is whether it makes money without destroying your life in the process. So when does all of this work? It works when earnings are clean, when growth is real and stable, when risk is low, and when documentation is tight and the numbers match. When the business can run without you being there every single day, that's a key sign. That's when a deal works for both sides. Buyers feel confident, sellers feel like they're getting a fair value, and everybody wins. Now, when does it fail? It fails when buyers chase cheap deals with high risk because they think they're getting a bargain. It fails when sellers try to sell stories instead of numbers. It fails when people focus on winning the negotiation instead of solving the actual problem, which is the risk. How much risk is there? Well, let me put it this way. You do not get paid for what you say from the sell side. You get paid for what you can prove. If you're newer to this, here's my advice. As a buyer, focus on clarity. Find businesses with clean numbers, a simple model, and a low risk. Don't try and be a hero on your first transaction. Flashy turnaround deals sound exciting, but honestly, they're terrible first purchases for most people. If you've done deals before and you already know where this breaks, your job at this point is not to negotiate harder, it's just to spot risk faster. The faster you can see the risk, the faster you know whether this deal is real or not, and if it's something you're comfortable with. So here's the filter I want you to take away from this video. Ask yourself one question. If the business lost its biggest customer tomorrow, would it survive? If the answer is no, you're not buying a business, you're just buying a future potential problem. And problems do not get cheaper after you close. If this was helpful, I have a free school community with over 30 hours of step-by-step training on how to find, analyze, and buy a small business. It's completely free. There's no catch. You can join using the link in the description. At the end of the day, buyers and sellers are not on opposite sides of the table. They're both trying to solve the same thing. Risk just reveals the reality.